It has been 1 year since my husband, Theodore, passed away. The silence in our Atlanta home is heavier than any grief. Grief is a living thing. It is the aching presence of an absence. But this new silence feels cold and sterile. It is the silence of waiting. Today, that silence has a new texture. It is the impatient, rustling silence of my son, Marcus. His wife, Tanya, is with him. They are moving through rooms that are not theirs. I stood in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the window over the sink. It illuminated dust motes dancing in the air. My hands were in warm water. I was carefully washing a crystal vase. We only use this vase for special occasions. Tomorrow is the 1-year memorial service at Ebenezer Baptist. Pastor Green asked me to arrange the altar flowers. This is a task I cherish. It is a routine. It is a way to channel my love for Theodore. It creates something beautiful and tangible. The scent of lilies and white roses filled the kitchen. It was a fragrant shield. It protected me from the tension coiling in the living room. I heard the front door open without a knock. That was Tanya's way of entering. "Mama Eloise? We are here." Her voice was bright and brittle. That sound always set my teeth on edge. I dried my hands on my apron. I walked out to greet them. I forced a small, tired smile. Tanya rushed forward and hugged me. Her hug was all perfume and sharp angles. My son, Marcus, hung back by the doorway. His eyes were already scanning the living room. He lingered on the mahogany sideboard. He stared at the grandfather clock his father loved. "Mama Eloise, you should not be wearing yourself out," Tanya said. She pulled back to hold me at arm's length. Her sharp eyes raked over my simple house dress. "You look tired. Truly," she said. "Let us handle things. That is what we are here for." I am fine, Tanya," I replied. My voice was softer than I intended. "Just arranging the flowers for the service tomorrow." "Flowers? Oh, that is sweet." She dismissed them with a wave of her hand. "We really need to talk about the meeting with the lawyer tomorrow. Did you find all the papers?" My husband's voice echoed in my memory. It was as clear as if he were standing beside me. "Watch what people do, Eloise," Theodore used to say. His hand was always warm on mine. "Not what they say. Talk is cheap. A person's actions will tell you the gospel truth every time." Their concern did not feel like love. It felt like impatience. It felt like the circling of buzzards. They were waiting for the last breath to leave the body. They had not asked me how my heart was. They had not shared a single memory of their father. They had only come to talk about the lawyer. Before I could answer, Tanya moved past me. She headed straight toward Theodore's study. "I will just help you get organized," she called over her shoulder. "You have had so much on your mind. I am sure everything is just everywhere." I followed her, my footsteps heavy. I stood at the doorway. I watched her run her fingers along the polished oak of his desk. Her audacity was breathtaking. This room was a sanctuary. It was the only place that still smelled like him. It smelled like old books, pipe tobacco, and peppermint. "Now," she said, turning on her high wattage, false smile, "where did Theodore keep all the important financial papers? You know, the bank statements, the investment portfolios, the keys to the safe deposit box? It is best if we have all our ducks in a row," she said. "We need them before we see Mr. Henderson." She was helpfully trying to organize, but her eyes were scanning, searching, hunting. This was not help. This was an inventory. This was an audit. A cold, protective instinct rose up in me. It was sharp as steel. I was not just a grieving widow. I was the guardian of Theodore's legacy. I was the fortress he had built around us. My faith reminded me of the scripture, "Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves." I stepped into the room. I gently closed the desk drawer Tanya had started to open. "Everything is in its right place, dear," I said. My voice was calm and steady. "Mr. Henderson is a very thorough man. He was your father's most trusted advisor. He has everything he needs for the meeting tomorrow." I watched her face closely. For a fraction of a second, the sweet mask slipped. I saw a flash of sharp, undisguised annoyance. It was the look of a frustrated business partner. It was not the look of a loving daughter-in-law. She glanced at Marcus, who was still by the door. That single look confirmed everything. It confirmed all I had been dreading for the past year. She recovered quickly. Her smile snapped back into place. Of course, Mama. Of course, we just worry. The rest of the day was a performance. We drank iced tea. We spoke of the weather. We spoke of the church service. But the truth hung unspoken in the air, thick and suffocating. They left just before sunset. They promised to pick me up for the meeting. I locked the door behind them. The click of the deadbolt echoed in the empty hall. I walked back to the kitchen. I looked at the half-arranged lilies. I understood now. Tomorrow was not about honoring Theodore's memory. It was not about mourning. It was about the reading of a will, and they had come to collect. The lawyer's office felt cold. It was not cold with grief, but with greed. I could smell the corrosive scent of it. It was rolling off my son and his wife. They sat across from me in Mr. Henderson's formal office. The memorial service that morning had been beautiful. Pastor Green spoke movingly of Theodore's generosity. The choir sang his favorite hymn, "Great is Thy Faithfulness." Tanya had cried, a performative, delicate dabbing at her eyes. Marcus had just looked impatient. Now, we sat in high-backed leather chairs. The chairs felt more like judgments than furniture. Mr. Henderson was a stern but kind man. He had been my husband's friend and lawyer for 30 years. He put on his reading glasses and cleared his throat. He looked at me over the rims. His gaze offered a small, sad comfort before he began. "We are gathered," he began, his voice formal, "to read the last will and testament of Theodore James Vance. I must first address the primary directive concerning the estate." He paused, shuffling the thick papers in front of him. Tanya leaned forward, just slightly. Her back was rigid. Marcus was tapping his fingers silently on the arm of his chair. It was a nervous rhythm that betrayed his manufactured calm. "Theodore," Mr. Henderson continued, "in his great wisdom, he executed a binding legal document. This was some months before his passing. This document supersedes all previous arrangements. Theodore Vance placed all major assets into a single trust. This included the primary residence in Atlanta. It included the vacation property in Savannah. It included the TV Vance investment portfolio. It included the controlling shares of his company, Vance Logistics. The trust is irrevocable." He looked up. "It is to be known as the Theodore Vance Legacy Trust." Tanya's perfectly painted lips pursed. "A trust?" she interrupted, her voice sharp. "What does that mean for Marcus?" Mr. Henderson held up a hand. "Please allow me to finish, Mrs. Vance." My heart had been a heavy stone in my chest all morning. Suddenly, it felt lighter. I closed my eyes for a brief second. A silent prayer of thanks was on my lips. Oh, Theodore, a trust. He was protecting me, even from the grave. He had seen the impatience. He had recognized the appetite in our daughter-in-law. He knew his son. He knew. My mind was filled with pure gratitude. It was a wave of warmth that steadied my nerves. Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses. He read the next, critical line. His voice was slow and deliberate. "As per the articles of the trust," he said, "there is only one executor. The sole trustee, with complete and autonomous control over all assets, disbursements, and decisions pertaining to the Theodore Vance Legacy Trust, is his beloved wife, Eloise Vance." The air in the room crackled and went still. Tanya's practiced, sympathetic smile froze on her face. It cracked like thin ice. Marcus's drumming fingers stopped. He stared at Mr. Henderson, his face slack with disbelief. Then, he leaped to his feet. The sudden movement made me jump. "Sole trustee?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "One? That is insane. I am his son. I worked for that company. What does that mean?" Tanya shot him a look. It was a sharp, silent command to sit down. But the damage was done. The mask of the grieving son had disintegrated. It revealed the raw entitlement beneath. Mr. Henderson did not flinch. He simply looked at Marcus. His expression was one of deep disappointment. "It means exactly what it says, Marcus. Your mother holds the keys to everything. So, what about us?" Tanya's voice was dangerously quiet. All pretense of sweetness was gone. "You and Marcus, Mr. Henderson explained, turning a page. You are listed as beneficiaries. This includes any future grandchildren and select charities. This means you are eligible to receive funds from the trust, but only at the discretion of the trustee. Your mother will provide for your reasonable needs, as she and your father always have. But she, and she alone, controls the funds. Beneficiaries. The word hung in the air like an insult. They could ask, but they could not take. They could receive, but they could not control. I watched Tanya. Her face was pale. Her eyes were like ice. She was staring at me. It was not with sadness or even anger. It was with a cold, hard calculation. In that moment, I saw her for what she truly was. The mask had not just slipped, it had been shattered. I was not her family. I was an obstacle. I was a roadblock between her and the millions. Millions she had already spent in her head. I felt Theodore's strength settle onto my shoulders. It felt like a heavy cloak. This was not the end, I realized with a sinking heart. This was the beginning of a war. I am a 68-year-old widow. I just want to tend my flowers and serve my church. But I was the only soldier left on the field. I would not fail him. I would not let them tarnish his legacy. The rest of the meeting was a blur. Mr. Henderson read a list of personal items. Theodore's watch for Marcus. His mother's pearls for me. It hardly mattered. The battlefield had been drawn. Later that evening, they were leaving my house. Tanya stopped at the door. Marcus was already in the car, sulking. She turned and gave me another one of her cold hugs. We are so glad you are protected, Mama, she whispered. Her breath was warm against my ear. So glad, but it must be so much pressure for you to handle all those big decisions, all that money, alone. She pulled back. Her face was a perfect mask of concern. We just worry about you. We really do. And just like that, the first seed was planted. It was not a seed of comfort. It was the first, insidious seed of my incompetence. The first time I thought I was losing my mind was over a set of keys. They were my husband's office keys. They were heavy, ornate brass keys to his locked desk drawers. That was where he kept the checkbooks for the estate. They were not keys I used often, but I had put them on the small hook by the kitchen door. I did this every single day for 40 years. They lived there, and one Tuesday morning, they were gone. Tanya had, as she promised, taken to visiting me daily. She arrived every morning, around 10 o'clock. She always brought a latte. To get you going, Mama. She also brought a briefcase full of helpful organizational folders. She said she was going to help me digest the new estate paperwork. She claimed it was stressful. She had appointed herself my unpaid, unsolicited assistant. I just cannot find them, Tanya, I said. My hands fluttered over the empty hook. I know I put them right here last night. I had to open the desk to pay the gardener. Tanya made a soft, cooing sound from the dining room table. She was sorting my mail. Mama, are you sure? She asked. Her voice was laced with that sickeningly sweet pity. You have been forgetting little things lately. Remember last week you could not find your reading glasses? And they were on your head? I bristled. That was one time. Of course, she soothed. Do not worry, it happens to everyone. You are just overwhelmed. You have so much on your plate, managing this big, empty house and all that complex finance. It is bound to make anyone a little forgetful. I stopped searching. I stood very still in the middle of my kitchen. A cold, creeping dread snaked up my spine. Did I forget? Did I put them somewhere else? I ransacked my mind. I tried to replay the previous night's events. I remembered locking the drawer. I remembered walking to the kitchen. But the memory after that was fuzzy. The certainty in Tanya's voice made me second-guess my own mind. The calm assumption of my failure was confusing. For one terrifying moment, I felt the floor tilt beneath my feet. What if she was right? What if I was overwhelmed? We searched the house for an hour. Or rather, I searched, growing more and more frantic. Tanya helped. She mostly followed me from room to room, sighing and making suggestions. Did you check the pantry, Mama? Are you sure they are not in your purse? Finally, she called out from the kitchen. Oh, Mama Eloise, You are not going to believe this. I rushed back in. She was standing in front of the open refrigerator. She held the heavy brass keys between her thumb and forefinger. They were in the butter compartment, she laughed. It was a high, tinkling sound. Oh my goodness, see? You just misplaced them. Oh, poor thing. You really do have too much on your mind. I stared at the keys. I had no memory of putting them there. I had no reason to go into the butter compartment. It was absurd. But there they were. The proof was dangling right in front of me. I felt a hot flush of shame. The pattern once established began to repeat itself. It repeated with chilling regularity. Important mail started to go missing. I was waiting for the monthly bank statement from the trust account. It never arrived. Are you sure, Mama? Tanya asked. She frowned in concentration as she looked at my neat stacks of mail. I was here when the postman came all last week. I do not remember seeing a big envelope from the bank. Maybe you put it somewhere safe and forgot? Like you did with the keys? I do not think so, Tanya, I said. But my voice wavered. It is okay, she said, patting my arm. I will just call the bank and have them send another one. And maybe we should have them send a copy to my house too? Just as a backup, so you do not have to worry about losing it. The suggestion was so reasonable. It was so helpful. And yet, it felt like the walls of my own life were closing in on me. I was being managed. I was being handled. I was being gently, lovingly painted as an incompetent old woman. The fog of self-doubt was thick. I was beginning to drown in it. But the Lord provides. He provides clarity, even in the deepest fog. One rainy afternoon, Tanya had left. It was after another helpful session of sorting my mail. I went to the small desk by the back door. That is where the postman usually left the stack. I was looking for a gardening catalog. As I knelt, something caught my eye. On the hardwood floor, partially hidden by the leg of the desk, was a small, distinct, muddy footprint. It was the tread of an expensive athletic shoe. It was a shoe I did not own. It was caked in the red Georgia clay from the side yard. No one ever used that path, unless they were trying not to be seen from the street. My heart stopped. Tanya always wore those fashionable, expensive sneakers. The ones with the distinct, complicated treads. She had supposedly been with me in the kitchen the entire time. The fog of self-doubt did not just clear. It was burned away by a sudden, cold, sharp suspicion. I had not put the keys in the refrigerator. Tanya had. She had not just found them. She had planted them. She was not just helping with the mail. She was intercepting it. She was stealing my bank statements. She was not worried I was overwhelmed. She was creating the overwhelm. She was not trying to help me. She was gaslighting me. She was trying to make me believe I was losing my mind. I stood up. My knees cracked, but my spine felt like steel. I was not forgetting. I was being managed. I was being hunted in my own home. My mind, which had felt so foggy, was suddenly sharp. It was sharp as a diamond. If they wanted to play a game, I would play. But I would play by my rules. And I would play for keeps. I decided to set a small trap. I needed to be sure. The next morning, I was bright and cheerful when Tanya arrived. "Oh, Tanya, dear, I am so glad you are here," I chirped. I feigned a flutter of anxiety. I just remembered. I am expecting a very important, large dividend check. It is from Theodore's old insurance policy. It is a supplemental one I had forgotten all about. It should be here any day. Could you keep an eye out for it? I am so worried I will misplace it. Tanya's eyes lit up. It was not with sympathy. It was with a quick, hungry flicker that she hid almost immediately. "Of course, Mama," she said, patting my hand. "You do not worry your pretty little head about it. I will watch the mail like a hawk." The trap was set. The entirely fake check was the bait, and I knew, with the certainty of a prayer, that she would take it. My son's betrayal did not come with a shout. It came with a whisper of false concern. It cut me deeper than any knife. It came through the telephone line on a Thursday evening. This was a day after my imaginary dividend check had failed to appear. Tanya, of course, had been a flurry of performative sympathy. She claimed she watched the mail carrier like a hawk. But the check simply never came. "Oh, Mama, maybe the post office lost it," she offered. "Or maybe you just misremembered the date?" Her eyes were sharp and assessing. She was watching me for a reaction. I knew she had been frantically checking the mail every day. She was searching for a check that did not exist. Now, she was frustrated. My little trap had confirmed her intentions. She was not just passively observing my decline, she was actively seeking to profit from it. But it was Marcus who delivered the real blow. "Mama?" His voice on the phone was hesitant. It was laced with a practiced, sorrowful tone. I had not heard that tone since he was a teenager. He used it when trying to explain a bad report card. "Marcus, son, how are you?" I asked. I kept my own voice light. I am okay, Mama. But, listen, Tanya and I are worried. We are really worried about you." I held the receiver, my knuckles white. "Worried? What about, dear?" There was a long pause. It was filled with what sounded like a coached sigh. "Mama, Tanya's really worried. She said you are losing important mail now. Big checks. And, she says you are getting confused. Confused about conversations we have had. She says you seem anxious all the time. Are you okay, Mama? Are you sure you are eating properly?" The words landed like physical blows. He was not asking. He was accusing. He was reading from a script. It was Tanya's script. They were building a narrative, brick by insidious brick. They were using my own son as the foreman. My flesh and blood. The boy I had raised. The child I had prayed over. He was actively participating in this conspiracy. A conspiracy to paint me as senile. The sting of it was sharp. It was a betrayal, so profound it took my breath away. He had not called to check on me. He had called to gather evidence. He was planting another flag in the territory of my incompetence. "I am eating just fine, Marcus," I said. My voice was dangerously calm. "And I am not confused. I am just disappointed." "See? That is what Tanya means," he said, seizing on the word. "You sound defensive." "Mama, we just love you. In fact, Tanya loves you so much. She went ahead and scheduled a doctor's appointment for you. Just a checkup. For your peace of mind and ours." My blood ran cold. "She what?" "It is all set, Dr. Reeves. Next Tuesday. And do not you worry," she insisted on coming with you. "You know, just to help you. Explain. All your symptoms." The audacity of it was breathtaking. They were not just whispering in the shadows. They were moving into the light. They were escalating. The following Tuesday, I was at the doctor's office. I sat on the crinkly paper of an examination table. My simple dress felt flimsy under the harsh lights. Tanya was beside me, holding a notepad. She looked for all the world like a devoted daughter. Dr. Reeves was a pleasant man I had only seen once before. He asked, "So, Mrs. Vance, what seems to be the trouble?" Tanya leaped in before I could open my mouth. "Oh, doctor, we are just so worried," she began. Her voice trembled with false emotion. She is not herself since my father-in-law passed. She has been having significant lapses in memory. "Oh." I watched in silent, cold horror. Tanya proceeded to list a litany of fabricated symptoms. She told him about the keys in the refrigerator. She told him about the lost bank statements. She told him about the missing dividend check. She described my confusion over dates. She described my anxiety about simple household tasks. She painted a picture of a woman descending into dementia, a woman who was a danger to herself. "She is handling a very large, very complex estate, doctor." Tanya finished, her eyes wet with crocodile tears. "And we are just terrified she is going to make a terrible mistake, or that someone will take advantage of her in her condition." In that moment, the full, horrifying scope of their plan crashed down on me. They were not just trying to annoy me. They were not just greedy. This was methodical. They were building a medical case against me. They were manufacturing a paper trail of incompetence. This was the first step to challenge my role as trustee. This was how they would try to get the court to declare me unfit. This was how they would seize control of Theodore's legacy. My fear which was a cold knot in my stomach, burned away. It was replaced by a cold, righteous, and terrible anger. I understood the enemy now. I saw the battlefield clearly. "Mrs. Vance?" Dr. Reeves said. He turned to me with a concerned frown. "Is that true? Have you been feeling confused?" I had a choice. I could fight. I could argue. I could call Tanya a liar right there. But I knew how that would look. It would look defensive and anxious. Exactly like the behavior Tanya had described. So, I did the last thing they expected. I played along. I looked up at the doctor. My eyes were wide. I let my hands tremble just a little. I do not know, doctor," I whispered. I let a tear slip down my cheek. Everything has been so hard since Theodore died. I do feel overwhelmed. Sometimes I do forget things. Tanya's face relaxed into a look of triumphant pity. She patted my hand. "It is okay, Mama. We will get you help." Dr. Reeves nodded, writing furiously on his chart. "Well, given the stress and these reported symptoms, I would like to schedule you for a full panel of cognitive tests, just to see what we are dealing with." Oh, thank you, doctor," Tanya breathed. It was as if he had just performed a miracle. That would give us all such peace of mind. She looked at me, her smile victorious. I nodded meekly, agreeing to the tests. But as I sat there, the confused old widow, my mind was working. My mind was sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. I knew exactly what I had to do. They had made their move. Now, it was my turn. The first person I would call when I got home was not the hospital. It was my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. My son and his wife showed up at my home on Saturday morning. They brought a stack of papers. They also brought a cheap bouquet of flowers from the grocery store. Tanya wore a smile that looked like it belonged on a crocodile. Tanya was all breezy efficiency. Marcus just looked gray. He would not meet my eyes. He was a man being dragged along by a current too strong for him to fight. "Good morning, Mama," Tanya chirped. She placed the wilted flowers on my counter. She did not bother to find a vase. "We bring good news. We spent all day yesterday with our lawyer. We finally got all the simple tax forms sorted out for the estate. We just need your signature." They sat me down at my own dining room table. The table where I had hosted decades of Thanksgiving dinners. The table where I had helped Marcus with his homework. They spread the papers out in a neat, imposing fan. It was a thick stack, full of dense legal language. "It is just standard procedure, Mama," Tanya explained. Her voice was smooth as silk. She tapped a yellow sticky note on the top page. "With the trust being so complex, this just lets Marcus help you with the day-to-day signatures. You know, paying the utility bills for the estate, signing off on stock transfers. Just little things," she said. "It just makes it so you do not have to stress about any of it. We can handle the burden." There was that word again, burden. The same word they used to describe the estate. The same word they used to describe me to my doctor. "Our lawyer said Mr. Henderson needs them urgently." Marcus mumbled this, his gaze fixed on the table. Something about the end of the quarter. I took a slow, deep breath. I prayed for a clear head and a steady hand. "Let me see them, dear." My hands were steady as I picked up the stack. They believed my hands were trembling with age. They thought I was confused. I put on my reading glasses. It was a deliberate, slow gesture. I knew they were watching me. They were watching for the confusion they worked so hard to create. They expected me to just sign where the little yellow arrows pointed. I slowly scanned the first page. It was full of legal jargon, as expected. I scanned the second page. More of the same. But my eyes were not as dull as they assumed. I had managed finances alongside Theodore for 40 years. I was not a woman who just signed things. And then, about 5 pages down, buried in a thicket of impenetrable clauses, I saw the title. It was not tax forms. It was not standard procedure. It was durable power of attorney. My blood did not just run cold, it froze. My internal monologue was a silent scream. A power of attorney. They were trying to trick me. They wanted me to sign away my control of everything. My health. My finances. The legacy trust. all under the guise of helping with tax forms. They were trying to perform a legal coup, right here at my dining room table. The cheap flowers on the counter seemed like a profound insult. They came to my house to steal my life from me, and they brought a $3 bouquet. I had to force myself to breathe. My first instinct was to throw the papers in their faces. I wanted to call them the vipers that they were. I wanted to cast them out of my house. But I remembered my new strategy. I remembered the wisdom of the serpent. If I reacted with anger, they would win. They would point to my rage as proof of my instability. So, I did the opposite. I feigned the very confusion they were counting on. I let the papers tremble in my hand. I looked up, my eyes wide and watery. "Oh my," I whispered, my voice frail. This looks so complicated. My old eyes are tired. I pushed the stack back toward them. "What does this part mean again, Tanya? The part about attorney?" I forced them to lie to my face. "Oh, that is just legal talk, Mama," Tanya said. She dismissed it with a flick of her hand. "It just means Marcus is like your lawyer, that he can sign for you. It is just to make things faster. It is what our lawyer advised." It is for the best, Mama," Marcus added. He finally looked at me, his eyes pleading for me to be stupid? Or for me to just give in and make it easy for him? I looked back down at the last page, the signature page they had so helpfully placed on top. That is when I saw the second, most damning piece of evidence. The signature line for the notary public was already filled in. Janine Rivers, Notary Public, Fulton County. Janine Rivers. I recognized the name instantly. I saw it on Tanya's social media posts. This was one of her closest friends, the one she went to yoga with. My mind pieced it together with chilling clarity. They had not just brought the papers. They had brought the notary with them. She was probably waiting in their car down the street, ready to be called in the second I signed, ready to make it all official before I could change my mind. They expected this to be a one-stop shop. They expected to walk out of my house this morning, with the keys to my entire life in their pocket. The cold anger in me finally solidified. It became something hard and clear. A resolve. My fear was gone. This was no longer just defense. This was offense. I was no longer a victim to be managed. I was the matriarch of the Vance legacy. It was time I started acting like it. I had to gather my own allies. I had to prepare the real battlefield. I took off my reading glasses and folded them. It was a gesture of finality. I smiled, a sweet, grandmotherly smile that did not reach my eyes. "You know, you are both absolutely right," I said. My voice was sweet as honey. "This is far too important to rush. And I am so grateful you are being so thoughtful." I carefully squared the stack of papers. I tapped them on the table. "It is so complicated. I would feel much better if I had my lawyer, Mr. Henderson, look them over. You know, just to make sure I understand everything. He is so good at explaining these things to an old woman like me." I pushed the stack gently back toward them. "Thank you for being so diligent. I will call him on Monday." The reaction was instantaneous. Marcus looked relieved. It was as if a great weight had been lifted from him. He had been spared from witnessing the final theft. But Tanya's face was a mask of pure, unfiltered panic. Her smile vanished. Her eyes went flat and cold. I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head. The calculations were short-circuiting. The plan, the notary in the car, the urgent deadline, all of it was crumbling to dust. She had lost, and she knew it. And I, her confused old mother-in-law, had just won the first battle. The confirmation of her intentions was absolute, and I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, what their next move would be. The moment I mentioned my lawyer, the thin, sugary veil of concern that Tanya wore burned away. It evaporated. It revealed the ugly, grasping, furious face hiding underneath. The air in my dining room, once warm, turned frigid. Tanya's hand, which rested on the fraudulent papers, clenched into a fist. She did not bother to rearrange her expression. The mask was off. She clearly decided it was too much trouble to put back on. "Your lawyer?" she snapped. Her voice was no longer the sweet coo of a loving daughter-in-law. It was the sharp, grating sound of a predator whose prey had just escaped the trap. "Mr. Henderson? Why would you need him if you have us?" "Mama Eloise, we were just trying to help you. We were trying to make this easy." "It did not seem easy, Tanya," I said. My voice was quiet but firm. "It seemed deceptive." "Deceptive?" She let out a short, bark-like laugh. "We are trying to protect this family's assets. Assets you are clearly incapable of managing. Oh, you lose keys, you miss checks. You cannot even remember a doctor's appointment without my help. And now you want to be difficult and involve lawyers?" She stood up abruptly. Her chair scraped harshly against the hardwood floor. Marcus flinched. "Besidde here." "Well," she said, snatching her purse from the floor, "that is fine. If you want to play it that way, you should know. We have already spoken to our own lawyer." I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. It was the strangest feeling, almost like relief. The war was no longer in the shadows. It was no longer a campaign of whispers and stolen keys. It was finally, mercifully, in the open. "Thank you, Lord," I thought, my heart steadying. "Thank you for clarity. Now I know exactly where I stand. Now I know exactly what I must fight." Marcus, seeing his wife's open aggression, finally found his voice. But the voice that came out was not his own. It was a weak, hollow echo of his wife's. He stood up, trying to look imposing. He just looked like a lost little boy in his father's suit. "Mama, Tanya is right," he said. His voice was hard, but his eyes darted away from mine. We do not think you are capable of managing this anymore. We have been advised. We have been advised to petition the court for conservatorship." There it was, the word, the final, nuclear option, the legal declaration that I was no longer a person, that I was just a problem to be managed. The threat they had been building toward for months. Tanya stepped forward. Her eyes glittered with a venomous triumph. "It is for your own good, Eloise," she said. She dropped the mama for the first time. The disrespect was a deliberate sting. "We have a strong case. The doctor agrees you are confused. He has already ordered the memory tests. We have proof you are losing important financial documents." She gestured to the unsigned papers on the table. "And now, this. Your paranoia about us. It just proves our point. You are not well." "The court will see that," Marcus chimed in. He was gaining confidence from her aggression. "They will see we are just trying to protect you. They will appoint someone qualified to manage the trust." "Qualified," Tanya repeated. Her gaze swept over my simple home, as if it were all hers. "Someone like Marcus." I listened to their threats. I listened to this rehearsed speech, a critical piece of the puzzle slotted into place. They did not just consult a lawyer. They had one on retainer. This was not a backup plan. This was not a sudden escalation because their trick had failed. This was the plan. The power of attorney was just the cheap, easy way out. If it failed, they were always prepared to go to war. They had been planning this for months, maybe longer. They had been building their case while I was still in the fog of grief. This was not an impulse. This was a cold, calculated conspiracy. My resolve hardened from steel into diamond. I was no longer a victim. I was a general. They thought they had me cornered. They thought they had the medical reports, the evidence. They had forgotten who I was. They had forgotten whose wife I was. And they had certainly forgotten about the one final weapon. The weapon Theodore, in his infinite wisdom, had left for me. The legacy foresight plan, as he had called it. It was time to prepare the battlefield. I stood up. The simple motion of me rising to my full height seemed to startle them. I was no longer the frail, confused old woman from the doctor's office. I looked at my son, not with anger, but with a profound, aching pity. He was so weak. He had traded his birthright for a bowl of his wife's bitter stew. "Marcus," I said. My voice had a new strength, a new resonance that made him flinch. "If you must do what you feel you must, then so be it. But this will not be settled in whispers and back rooms. We will not have this fight in courtrooms full of strangers. We will not tarnish your father's good name." I walked to the head of the table. I walked to Theodore's chair. I placed my hands on the back of it. I am calling a family meeting. Here, in this house. This coming Friday at 3 o'clock. You bring your lawyer, Mr. Shaw, or whoever it is. You bring your proof. You bring your petition. I looked them both dead in the eye, one after the other. And I finished, will bring mine. I set the stage for my own trial. I had 5 days. They were not spent in fear, but in preparation. My preparation was both spiritual and strategic. I had my Bible open on the coffee table. The pages were worn and soft. I drew strength from the Psalms. I had a fresh pitcher of sweet tea chilling in the refrigerator, and I had my husband's final secret. His legacy foresight plan was locked safely in his desk. My first call was to Mr. Henderson. I called after Marcus and Tanya had stormed out. I explained everything. The lost keys, the doctor's appointment, the fraudulent power of attorney. He listened in silence. His silence grew heavier and angrier with every detail. When I was finished, he simply said, "Eloise, I am so sorry I did not see this coming." Theodore, however, it seems he did. "I know exactly what legacy foresight means," he said. "I was there when he recorded it. Friday at 3. I will be there." My second visit was to my pastor. I went to Ebenezer Baptist on Wednesday. I did not go for service, but for counsel. I sat with Pastor Green in his office. The afternoon light fell on his kind, wise face. I unburdened my heart. I told him of my son's betrayal. I told him of my daughter-in-law's greed. I told him of the coming confrontation. He listened, steepled his fingers, and nodded slowly. "Sister Eloise," he said, his voice a deep, calming rumble. "You are in a storm, but you are not the storm. Remember David and Goliath. The Lord does not always choose the strongest soldier. He makes his chosen soldiers strong in his own time. You are standing in your truth. Do not be afraid. The truth has a power all its own, and the righteous are bold as a lion." I left that office, not with a spirit of fear. I left with a spirit of power, and of love, and of a sound mind. I was nervous, yes. My stomach fluttered when I thought of what was to come. But I was, underneath it all, peaceful. I was not fighting for money. I was fighting for Theodore's honor. I was fighting for my own dignity. I was fighting for the principle of respect. Friday arrived, sharp and bright. At 2:45, Mr. Henderson arrived. His face was grim and professional. He carried a single, slim briefcase. I had arranged the living room not as a cozy space. I had arranged it as a boardroom. I had my armchair at the head. Mr. Henderson sat to my right. On the coffee table, I placed 5 glasses and the pitcher of sweet tea. It was a simple, southern gesture of hospitality. It belied the cold steel in my spine. At 3 o'clock on the dot, the doorbell rang. Marcus, Tanya, and their lawyer, Mr. Shaw, filed in. They looked like a hostile takeover team. Tanya was dressed in a severe black pantsuit. Her face was a mask of grim determination. Marcus was pale, his eyes red. He looked like a man marching to his own execution. Their lawyer, Mr. Shaw, was tall and expensive. He carried a heavy briefcase full of ammunition. He had a smug, predatory smile. I disliked him instantly. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice slick, "thank you for arranging this. It saves us all time and unpleasant court filings. Shall we begin?" They sat on the sofa opposite me. Tanya immediately began. "We are here," she said, "to formally request that Eloise step down as trustee, and that Marcus be appointed in her place." Mr. Shaw flipped open his case. He began pulling out thick tabbed folders. "We are prepared to file for an emergency conservatorship. It is based on overwhelming evidence of diminished capacity." For the next 20 minutes, I sat in silence. I listened to them build their mountain of lies. Mr. Shaw, with Tanya providing emotional details, outlined their case. He spoke of the keys in the refrigerator. He called it a classic sign of dementia. He spoke of the lost bank statements and the missed check. He called it financial mismanagement. Then, he produced a letter from Dr. Reeves. "We have a medical opinion," he said, "based on Mrs. Vance's own admissions, and her daughter-in-law's concerned observations, that she is suffering from memory lapses, confusion, and paranoia. The final proof was the power of attorney. My clients, Shaw said, in a good faith effort to help Mrs. Vance, offered to take on the simple burden of daily signatures. She reacted with suspicion and paranoia, accusing them of deception. My heart ached as I watched my son, Marcus. Mr. Shaw would state a lie, and Marcus would nod. Is that correct, Mr. Vance? Did you witness your mother's confusion over the mail? Yes, Marcus whispered, his eyes on the floor. She was very confused. My heart broke. It was not the lie that broke it. It was the weakness. He was so weak. He was so utterly cowed by his wife. He would sit in his father's house and trade his soul for a lie. I realized, in that moment, he was a lost cause. My fight was not to save him. It was to save the legacy his father died to protect. When Mr. Shaw finally finished, he leaned back. His smile was triumphant. So you see, Mrs. Vance, the evidence is conclusive. The court will grant our petition. We are offering you the chance to do this quietly. Sign over the trust to Marcus, and we can all move on. I let the silence hang in the room. I looked at Tanya's smug face. I looked at my son's broken, averted gaze. Then, I turned to Mr. Shaw. Thank you, Mr. Shaw, I said. My voice was clear and steady. It made him sit up straight. You have built a very strong case, but it is built on a foundation of sand. And now, I said, the tide is coming in. I did not raise my voice. I did not weep. I held up a single hand, palm out. You have presented your evidence. Now, I will present mine. I turned to my lawyer. Mr. Henderson, if you would. Mr. Henderson nodded gravely. He did not reach for a stack of papers. He did not pull out any medical files. He simply opened his slim briefcase. He took out a single, sleek, silver laptop. The climax had begun. My son and his wife came to declare me incompetent. They had their folders, their smug lawyer, and their tower of lies. They forgot one thing. They forgot whose house they were in. They were sitting in the living room my husband built. And Theodore Vance always had the final word. I stood up. The simple movement seemed to draw all the air out of the room. I walked to the large television mounted above the fireplace. It was the one Tanya had always insisted was too gaudy. I pressed the power button, and the screen flickered to life. Mr. Henderson stood. He calmly connected the laptop to the television with a cable. The laptop's desktop background appeared on the large screen. Tanya let out an impatient, condescending little laugh. She whispered loudly to Marcus, "What is this, Mama? A home movie? Are you going to bore us to death with old Christmas videos?" I turned to face her. I looked at this woman who had entered my home, who had eaten at my table, who had plotted to steal my life. "In a way, dear," I said. My voice was as cold and clear as a winter morning. "This is what your father-in-law called his legacy foresight plan. He asked us to prepare it, just in case. He was a very thorough man." Tanya's smirk faltered. It was replaced by a flicker of confusion. Mr. Shaw, the lawyer, leaned forward. His brow was furrowed. He had not anticipated this. Mr. Henderson clicked play. The screen filled with the image of Theodore. My heart clenched. He was in his study. He was sitting in the very chair Marcus was now avoiding. He was thin. Much thinner than I remembered. The illness had already taken its toll. He looked frail, his hands resting on the desk. But his eyes were not frail. They were sharp as steel. They were ablaze with the fire and intelligence I loved. He looked directly into the camera. He looked directly at us. And he began to speak. "Hello, Marcus." "Hello, Tanya," he said. His voice was weak, but the recording was high quality. It filled the room. "Hello, Mr. Shaw, or whoever you are. If you are watching this, it means I have gone home to the Lord. And it means you," he paused, his eyes narrowing, "have done exactly what I prayed you would not." My hand went to my heart. My fingers clutched the small cross I wore. "Speak to them, my love," I thought, a silent prayer. "Speak to your son. Remind him who he is." Tanya's face had gone pale. Marcus looked like he had seen a ghost. Theodore on the screen took a ragged breath. Marcus, my son, I love you. You are my blood. But you are weak, and your wife. He shook his head, a look of profound sorrow on his face. Your wife, Tanya. She has an appetite that cannot be filled. She has a hole in her spirit she tries to fill with things. I have feared, since the day you married her, that when I am gone, she will turn that appetite on your mother. And I feared, his voice broke, just for a second, that you would be too weak to stop her. Oh, this is ridiculous, Tanya hissed, half rising. He was sick. He was on medication. This is inadmissible. Sit down, Mr. Schaff snapped. His eyes were glued to the screen. His face was pale. He knew what this was. Inadmissible? Theodore's voice boomed from the screen. It was as if he had heard her. This is a videotape directive. It was recorded alongside a notarized trust memorandum and a capacity affidavit. A psychiatrist was present to attest to my sound mind. And depressing. It is, in all matters, my final word. Tanya fell back onto the sofa as if she had been struck. Theodore continued. His gaze softened as he looked at the camera. It was as if he were looking right at me. My wife, Eloise. She is the finest, wisest, strongest woman I have ever known. For 40 years, she was not just my wife, she was my partner. She balanced our books. She advised me on every investment. She read every contract. Oh, this woman, who you have tried to paint as a confused old fool, has a financial mind sharper than a room full of your experts. I left her in charge of my trust, not because I was being sentimental. I left her in charge because she was, and is, the most qualified person. The most qualified person on this earth to manage it. He leaned closer to the camera. His eyes burned with a righteous fire. If you are watching this video, it means you have tried to challenge your mother's authority. It means you have tried to have her declared incompetent. It means you have used her grief against her. It means you have failed this test, my test. You have proven yourself to be exactly what I feared. Greedy, disrespectful, and unfit. He looked directly at Marcus. You have failed, son. You have shamed my name. The video was the ultimate tough love. It was a father's last, desperate attempt to save his son's soul. It was a husband's final, brilliant move to protect his wife. It was Theodore, reaching out from the grave. And his aim was true. I watched them. I watched the color drain completely from Tanya's face. It left a sickly, greenish-pale mask of horror. Her eyes were wide, her mouth open. She was ruined. But my eyes were on my son. Marcus was not angry. He was not defiant. He was collapsed. He had bent over at the waist, his head in his hands. His shoulders were shaking with great, silent, gut-wrenching sobs. Sobs of pure, unadulterated shame. The ghost of his father had just judged him, and he had been found wanting. Justice was served. Not hot and angry, but cold, precise, and absolute. The video ended. Theodore's face faded to black. The only sound in the room was the hum of the television, and the sound of my son weeping. No one moved for a full minute. Tanya was frozen, catatonic. Marcus was broken. Then, Mr. Shaw, the smug lawyer, slowly and quietly closed his briefcase. The click of the latches was deafeningly loud. He stood up, his face ashen. He knew he had been completely outmaneuvered by a dead man. My clients, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper, retract their petition. We retract everything. Our apologies for the misunderstanding. He was already backing toward the door. The truth, once it is uncaged, does not go back. It sat in the room, roaring. The silence that followed was more powerful than any argument. Mr. Shaw's hasty retreat was a white flag of surrender. He was halfway out the door before anyone else moved. Mr. Henderson, ever the professional, rose and saw him out. I was left in the living room with the ruins of my family. Marcus was still sobbing, his face buried in his hands. They were the desperate sobs of a child who has been found out. I am sorry, Mama, he choked out, the words muffled. I am sorry. I did not know. I did not know he. I am so sorry. He did not know. He had not known his own father. He had not known his own wife. He had not known his own mother. He had been a blind fool, led by the nose. But Tanya. Oh, Tanya was a different story. She was no longer the smug lawyer. She was not the horrified victim. The shock had passed. It had been replaced by something primal. She was rigid, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. Her face, which had been pale, was now flushed with a dark red. Her eyes were fixed on the black television screen. They were filled with a pure, undiluted, and terrifying hatred. She was not sorry. She was not ashamed. She was furious that she had been caught. She was enraged that she had been outmaneuvered. She was livid that the prize had been snatched from her grasp. Mr. Henderson returned. He closed the living room doors quietly behind him. He gave us privacy for what came next. I stood up from my chair. My voice, when I spoke, did not tremble. It was not the soft tone of a grandmother. It was not the meek whisper of a woman at a doctor's office. It was the clear, cold, strong voice of a chief executive officer. It was the voice of Eloise Vance, trustee. Mr. Henderson, thank you for your service today, I said. Please, stay for a moment. I need you to witness this. I turned my attention to the sofa. I looked at Tanya. The last shred of pity I had for her evaporated. I saw the rot, and I knew it was too deep to heal. It had to be cut out. I could not save my son while she was attached to him. Marcus. Tanya, I said, my voice commanding. Your father, my husband, left this trust in my care. He left it for me to protect and to nurture, and I will. I paused, letting the words sink in. I will protect it from all threats, internal and external. End quote. Marcus looked up, his face a mess of tears and shame. Tanya's head snapped toward me, her eyes shooting daggers. Effective immediately, I announced. All non-essential disbursements from the trust to you are suspended. Suspended indefinitely. The sobs in Marcus's throat died with a gasp. Tanya, however, exploded. She shot to her feet, the venom and greed finally erupting. You cannot do that, she shrieked. Her voice was a raw, ugly sound. You cannot. We have expenses. We have a mortgage. The car payments. We are beneficiaries. You are beneficiaries, yes, I countered. My voice cut through her tirade. You are entitled to the benefit of the trust, but you are not entitled to a lifestyle funded by my husband's work, especially when you have just tried to steal it from his widow. I took a step toward her. You have a job, Tanya. Marcus has a job. It is time you learn to live on what you earn, not what my husband earned. The trust will ensure your mortgage is not foreclosed upon. But your car payments, your club memberships, your shopping sprees, those are over. The free ride has ended. This was a version of me they had never seen. I was no longer just the guardian of the legacy. I was the executor of its power. I was setting the boundary, not in sand, but in granite. I was choosing legacy over toxic family ties. I was choosing respect over a broken relationship. Tanya looked like she was going to lunge at me. Her hands were curled into claws. Get out, I said. She froze. What? I want you, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Out of my house, the house I control. The house you tried to take from me. I want you out. Now. I then turned to my son. He was staring at me in terror and awe. My voice softened, but only a fraction. Marcus, you are my son. You are welcome to stay. You can stay and talk to me, to begin to atone. But she, and I pointed a steady finger at Tanya. She must leave. This instant. I had drawn the line. I had made him choose. His father's house, or the woman who had tried to destroy it. Tanya looked at Marcus, her eyes demanding loyalty. Marcus, are you going to let her talk to me like that? Are you coming? Marcus looked at his wife's face, twisted in rage. He looked at my face, calm and resolute. He looked at the floor. He could not move. He was a broken, spineless man, trapped. Fine, Tanya spat, grabbing her purse. Fine, you will hear from my lawyer. No, Mr. Henderson's voice cut in, sharp and final. You will not, because if you do, Mrs. Vance is prepared to file a police report for attempted fraud, conspiracy, and elder abuse. We have an eyewitness and a video-recorded motive. Your legal options, Mrs. Vance, are non-existent. Goodbye." Tanya's face went white. She had nothing left. She stared at me, her eyes promising murder. Then, she turned and stormed out of my living room. She slammed the front door so hard the grandfather clock chimed. Peace is not the absence of a storm. It is the strength to stand firm in the storm. As the front door clicked shut, peace settled back into my home. The oppressive, greedy fog had lifted. I could breathe again. I turned to Mr. Henderson. "Thank you, my friend, for everything." He nodded, his eyes kind. "Theodore was a good man, Eloise. And you," he said, taking my hand, "you are a very, very strong woman. Call me if you need anything at all." He showed himself out, leaving me alone with my son. Marcus had not moved from the sofa. He was still bent over. The sobs of shame had quieted into exhausted weeping. He was a man who had lost everything. He had lost his inheritance. He had lost his father's respect. And he had just lost his wife. He looked up at me, his face ravaged. He looked, for the first time in 20 years, like a little boy. "Mama?" His voice was a broken whisper. What do I do now?" I did not. I sat down, not on the sofa next to him. I sat in my own armchair, the seat of power. I looked at him with the clear eyes of a mother who loved her child, but who would no longer be blinded by that love. "First," I said, my voice firm but not unkind, "you stop making excuses. You are a 40-year-old man. You knew what you were doing. You chose. You chose her greed over my grief. You chose your entitlement over your father's honor." He flinched, but I continued. "You ask what you do now? You learn to be a man your father would be proud of. You learn to stand on your own 2 feet, without my money or his. You go to your own home, Marcus. You go and you fix your own house. You figure out if your marriage is worth saving. Or if it was ever anything more than a business transaction. And you start the long, hard work of rebuilding your own soul. This house," I said, gesturing around us, "this house is mine. This legacy is mine to protect. You will not be welcome back in it, not until you have proven you understand what that means." He nodded, a jerky, broken movement. He stood up, unsteady, and walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the knob. "I love you, Mama." I love you too, Marcus," I said. "And that is why I am doing this. This is the last, best gift your father and I can give you. The gift of a hard truth. Now go." He left. I was, for the first time, truly alone in my house. I sat there for a long time. I grappled with the profound, aching pain of it. I had just banished my only son. I had been forced to use my husband's final message as a weapon. It was a necessary, tough love, as Theodore had called it, but it had wounded my heart to do it. It was a choice between saving his inheritance and saving his soul. We had chosen his soul. I gave the pain, the outcome, the entire mess of it, to God. The following Sunday was bright and beautiful. I walked into Ebenezer Baptist, my head held high. The tension in my shoulders was gone. I felt lighter. Sister Hattie, the head usher, wrapped me in a warm, genuine hug. "Sister Eloise, you are looking peaceful this morning. It is good to see." Oh, Pastor Green's sermon was about building your house upon the rock. It was not about building on the sand. As the choir sang, I looked around at my community. These people had supported me. They respected me. They saw me, not my money, not my age. They were my true family. I realized, in that moment, that my strength had always been there. God had given it to me, and Theodore had cherished it. The crisis had not created my strength. It had just forced me to finally, fully use it. I was not old. I was not confused. I was, as Pastor Green had said, a lioness. I was formidable. I was Eloise Vance, 68 years young. I was fully liberated. I was in complete control of my finances, my home, and my dignity. I was, and am, the true matriarchy of the Vance legacy. Later that evening, I walked into Theodore's study. For the past year, I had avoided this room. The silence in here was the loudest. It was his space. My grief had made me a trespasser. But now, I walked in not as a visitor. I walked in as the one in charge. I sat down in his large leather chair. It did not feel too big anymore. It felt right. I turned on the small desk lamp. Its warm glow illuminated the polished wood. I opened the center drawer, the one I pretended I could not find the keys for. Inside lay the estate checkbook. I opened it. My heart was full, not with sadness, but with a quiet, profound sense of purpose. I thought about the battle I had just won. I thought about the hard, painful truth. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who will see your kindness as weakness. They will see your patience as permission. They will see your age as an opportunity for exploitation. They will stand in the light your loved ones built. They will try to claim the warmth as their own, all while casting a shadow on your very worth. My husband, in his wisdom, knew that. He knew that true love is not just about providing. It is about protecting. And sometimes, protection does not look like a soft blanket. Sometimes, it looks like a locked door. It looks like a hard boundary. It looks like a no that rings with power. I picked up the pen. I did not write a check to my son. I did not write one to his greedy, broken wife. The first check I wrote as the sole, undisputed trustee was not an act of obligation. It was an act of liberation. I wrote a large donation to the Ebenezer Baptist Church Community Fund. This fund is dedicated to helping other seniors in Atlanta. It helps them manage their finances and pay their utility bills. Most importantly, it helps them find legal help when they are being exploited. I signed my name, Eloise Vance. My signature was firm and clear. I closed the checkbook. I had defended my home. I had honored my husband. I had reclaimed my dignity. I had taken the bitterest betrayal and turned it into a blessing for others. I was free. Thank you for listening to my story. I pray it serves as a reminder to you. Never let anyone gaslight you into thinking your wisdom is confusion. Never let anyone make you believe that your age is a weakness. Your legacy is not just in the money you leave behind. It is in the respect you demand. It is in the boundaries you hold. It is in the truth you are willing to fight for. Be wise as the serpent, but harmless as the dove. But know, when you must, how to be the lioness. God bless you.